All right, so I know in the last video with the dinosaurs and all that, I said that I wasn't going to make this whole tier list thing my entire identity, right? And I still claim that, right? But this is just too much damn fun. I enjoy doing this too much, and there's so many. I'm a man of a variety of interests. Yeah, everything from music to food to sports. Well, I know I said I wasn't the biggest sports fan. And when I say sports, I mean sports in the broadest of terms, right? As we'll see here in just a few moments. Even the world of sports entertainment kind of fits into that category for me. But, anyway. So this time, and I'll say another thing real quick. Most of the things that I'm going to cover, and even before I, decided to jump on the whole tier list bandwagon, you talk about what you know, okay? Now, I'm 43 years old, and my life's kind of over, right? I mean, my life is my job and my family. So I don't want to say like, oh, there's no meaning to life, I'm depressed, I'm going to kill myself. None of that. No. It's just I don't have a fucking social life or a lot. I don't get to chase my interests all that much these days. I'm not complaining. Believe me, I love my children. I love my wife. I love my job, all that stuff. But I don't really, you have to sacrifice a lot once you get to this age. You can't, it's not all about you anymore. So most of the stuff, what I'm getting at, most of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is things that I was into or very aware of, educated on back in my day, back in the days of my youth. So eventually, like, new metal bands will come down the pike, right? Things that I have any business, that I know something about, right? I can't talk about, like, the best movies or the best TV shows, because I don't partake in a lot of media these days, other than the odd video game here or there. Anyway, you guys don't need to hear a whole fucking backstory. I always go too long with these intros. This one, as is obvious by the fact that you clicked on the fucking thumbnail, is about wrestling gimmicks, specifically between the 80s and 90s. Again, when I gave a shit. When I was a kid in the 80s, when I was a teenager in the 90s, I'm not going beyond that, okay? I dropped off after WWF, WWE, absorbed WCW. That's about where I fell off. I stopped giving a shit right about then. The Monday Night Wars era was over. I was too busy with, other important shit. Disregard the beeps and boops and fucking phone notifications every fucking video. It wouldn't be a video if I didn't get some kind of fucking... Anyway. All right, I gotta calm down. So yeah, we're gonna stick to the 80s and the 90s, all right? And I'm not gonna... This is gonna be a multi-part series. Because there's way too many fucking wrestlers to get through in one sitting. This would be a 4-hour video if I did that, and I don't have the time for that. I know you don't have the time for that. And I need to fill up space on this channel anyway, so whatever. It'll give me something to do. Now, something that I should get out of the way straight away. This is not about the best wrestlers, as in individual human beings, okay? This is just about the gimmicks, period. Right? So, for instance, Kane. Everybody knows who Kane is, right? Glenn Jacobs. He was Kane, but he's also Fake Diesel. He's also Dr. Isaac Yankem, right? Those are 3 fucking separate characters. Okay, now, the individual portrayal, speaking of Fake Diesel, right? It's going to be hard for me to rank Diesel as a character when there was 2 guys that played him. But really, look, man, we know that fucking Glenn Jacobs didn't play Diesel for very long. That went down the tubes faster than it fucking started. So if we do bring up Diesel or somebody like that, we're going to go with the main guy. That'll be Kevin Nash and his portrayal of that character. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get into this thing. Starting things off, Brutus, the Barber Beefcake. Oh, and look, I guess I'm doing this as, I'm assuming that you've watched the other video, but that's a stupid assumption, right? look, man, it's like S tier, F tier, whatever. Here it's Apex, Badass, Win, Nah, L, and Ass Blast. I don't think there's a great description required, right? It goes from the top to the bottom. You guys aren't dumb. I have faith in you. Okay, so anyway, let's get going here. Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Now, as a kid, I liked Brutus. I don't know why. I was fucking 8, 9 years old when I first started watching the shit, and I was aware of him, and he's a zany, crazy guy with giant hedge clippers. He had a sweet theme song. At least I think it slaps even to this day. So yeah, Brutus the Barber Beefcake. But what is that gimmick? He had his tights were all shredded up. He had a crazy mullet. He had this crazy fucking look in his eyes. Was he a great wrestler? And see, so that's the thing. I'm gonna be honest. Haven't really worked out the criteria. Look, if you go back, you watch my previous videos, I don't really think this shit through before I get started. I kind of make the rules up as I go, and I do what I want. You don't like it? Start your own thing, I guess. I don't know. So I haven't really quite worked out whether I'm going to weigh their in-ring ability versus their promo ability versus the gimmick itself and their theme music. I don't know how much I'm going to put into all this. Again, the rules can change as I go because this is just about whatever. He's a fucking barber. Now, that's a fucking dumb gimmick on its face. However, it's not like he showed up, in some bland-ass uniform with a pair of scissors and a pair of, beard trimmers or anything like that. The dude had giant hedge clippers. And he looked fucking nuts. Was he a great worker? I don't really remember much. I don't remember looking back and thinking, wow, that dude really sold his shit. So whatever. Now, of course, then by today's standards, things differ. So if you're a young person out there who's a fan of The Miz and fucking RKO, and Randy Orton and all, we're gonna have an impasse here or there, right? There's gonna be points of contention. I personally think modern wrestling is ass. Right, in terms of its gimmicks. I mean, I'm sure the athletes, I think, are probably better. The in-ring work may be leveled up considerably from back in the day, but the gimmicks, the character, I find that to fall flat these days. Whatever, everybody's got their opinion. Come up with your own tier list if you want. I'm going to put Brutus the Barber Beefcake in the... for the time, again, so that's, I guess, what I was going back to. For the time, you got to consider the time in which these guys were around. And this was back in, the fucking late 80s, early 90s. And in that case, man, I guess I should have created my tiers a little more thoughtfully, but because I got to go between the W and the Nah. But I can't. It goes from Win to Nah. For the time, and because that theme song slapped, Brutus goes into the W category. Next up on the list, Adam Bomb. Some may remember him as the character Wrath, which was the same fucking character minus the goggles, and there was no 3 Mile Island backstory to go with it. But he's a big fucking dude. Probably, they listed him at about 6'8", 6'9". Realistically, the dude probably walks around about 6'5", something like that. But a big guy nonetheless. He had a mean power bomb, which I can't remember exactly, but I'm sure they called it the Atom Bomb or some stupid shit. Harvey Whippleman was his manager. Harvey Whippleman seemed to manage a lot of the freak shows, Giant Gonzalez among them. I think Yokozuna, and before Mr. Well, I don't know, maybe I could be wrong about that. Maybe Mr. Fuji was the guy from the very beginning. I don't know. But anyway, Atom Bomb looked kind of fucking corny to me. Those goggles made him look like a retard. He's a big, intimidating guy. Wrath was definitely the better gimmick for that dude. I forget his real name. Atom Bomb is going to go into the L category. I don't know. your gimmick is you're a dude that was born on 3 Mile Island. You should have like a third arm growing out the back of your neck, or you should look like a fucking mutant of some kind, not just some dude with a mullet and goggles, okay? So fuck him. Anyway, Sparky Plug. How many of you guys out there remember Sparky Plug? I do. Before Bob Holly, before Hardcore Holly, right, it was Sparky Plug, the race car driver. Right? I don't know if you guys remember. Before Hardcore Holly, it was Bob Holly. They didn't. The Sparky Plug gimmick didn't last long, but really it kind of did, because all they did is they dropped that name, called him Bob Holly, and I think he partnered, if I'm not mistaken, with Al Snow for a little bit, and they were like these race car drivers or something. I don't fucking know. Sparky Plug is the dumbest fucking name, the least intimidating name you could ever have for a wrestler. Now, granted, I'm not trying to diss on Bob Holly. He's a tough guy. Kind of renowned for being one of the toughest in the business. But Sparky Plug, that's ass blast all fucking day. I don't think I need to elaborate any further. Guess where else I don't need to elaborate? On Max Moon. I'm going to talk about this guy for about 2 seconds, all right? Actually, my brain hurts now. I don't even know where to begin with this guy, so it is going to take longer than 2 seconds. Look at this fucking outfit. I don't know what the hell they were trying to... I don't know if they were trying to combine, like, the luchador angle with the fucking... whatever the Japanese people had going on at the time, and this guy's, like, some combination of those two things with Mega Man. He's got, like, pyrotechnics blasting out of his fucking... You know, he's got some, like, wrist blasters or something. I don't know the guy's real name. I think, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, I think he was a decent worker, whoever he is, but that is the absolute fucking... Just, you're scraping the bottom of the fucking toilet's pipe. That's fucking... That's ass blast, too. And I don't think there's a stronger blast of the ass than fucking Max Moon. Even the name itself. Fuck, that's terrible. Anyway. So unlike the dinosaurs video, we're just starting at the fucking bottom here, I guess. Anyway, there is hope. Because next up we have Sting. Now. Steve Borden. Sting. He's worked with actually a few gimmicks over the years. I know that his AEW or TNA or whatever the hell he's doing these days, if he's not retired yet, I know that if he's not retired yet, that retirement match is coming up. That dude's getting old. I think it's time. This guy, I hate to say it because the dude's great, but there's two. I know he tried to rip off like Heath Ledger's Joker gimmick. Okay, which is something I'll say about Sting. You know, he had the crow thing going. He had the surfer thing going. He had the Joker thing going. Like all these different gimmicks and that. None of them very original. Right? Surfer Sting, that's like, he and the Warrior were both part of the Blade Runners. They split off, went their own separate ways, and they adopted very similar gimmicks. Obviously, Sting, a much better athlete, a much better worker than the Warrior. But, he was in WCW, which was the turd league at the time in the fucking late 80s, early 90s, in contrast to WWF. So the Ultimate Warrior, he was more jacked, he was in a bigger company, whatever. We'll get to the Warrior later. As far as Sting goes, we're not talking about the Surfer gimmick, though. We're talking about the Crow gimmick. The black and white. Or the black and red, I guess, which I always hated. I hated the red and black NW. I thought that was stupid. But the thing is, where it was just basically a ripoff of the Crow, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was Scott Hall's idea. He's the one that put that in Sting's ear. Unoriginal, however, Steve Borden was able to do a lot with that character, and it fit right in. That kind of anti-hero, right? You had the WCW versus the NWO at the time, and now you've got this guy in the middle. You're not sure. Where does his allegiance lie? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Who's he going to bash upside the head next with that fucking baseball bat? He's like flying out of the rafters in a trench coat and shit. He did a lot with it, and it was pretty cool. And, I always liked Sting. I always liked Steve. He's a fucking great in-ring worker. Just one of the all-time Hall of Famers in the fucking business. And, man, the gimmick is unoriginal, though. Because, again, we're talking about Crow version Sting. Totally unoriginal, but he did so much with it, and it was so iconic. And, in fact, I still have my very own Sting mask that I got from like back in 1997 when I went to one of those shows. I'm going to put Sting, Crow Sting, into badass tier. Not the best, but damn, man, did he ever do a lot with that gimmick. Next up, Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig. Personally, I gotta admit, Curt Hennig is in my top 3 wrestlers of all time. I don't give a fuck what gimmick, because he had some fucking bad ones too. For those of you who don't remember, he played some fucking dipshit with a cowboy hat, even though he's from fucking Minnesota. He played a redneck who hated rap music. That was fucking terrible. But damn it, Curt Hennig is like, there is no one better. And that Mr. Perfect gimmick was, no pun intended, perfect. For him, the dude was an all-star athlete throughout high school, throughout college. The guy could do it all. Physically, there was nothing that dude couldn't pull off if he put his mind to it. And I guess he fucking knew it. And man, he just fucking picked the perfect gimmick. God, I keep saying perfect, and again, I'm telling you, there's no pun intended. The best. The fucking absolute best. Curt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, goes right to apex. Nobody fucking better. No better gimmick, no gimmick more perfect for a fucking individual. He's at the top. All right, next up, Big Boss Man. I mean, this is a rock-solid gimmick, too. The dude was a correctional officer, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day. That's what he did before he broke into the world of pro wrestling. He was a prison guard or a warden or some shit. He worked with the police department. And that's where he got the gimmick. And just look at this fucking guy. Look at that haircut. Look at his face. You can tell that dude is a real cop from Cobb County, Georgia. And I always had a fucking, I'll be honest, I had a bias. When I was a kid, in the heyday of the WWF, back in the golden era, that's when I was at my peak fandom with it. The Big Boss Man never was my favorite, but I actually had an uncle who was a police officer in Cobb County, Georgia at the time. And I used to, my Uncle Daryl, I always thought was going to be my link to getting in touch with the Big Boss Man. So if I could meet one of these wrestlers, that was going to be my entryway. Well, I don't have to explain how that fucking works, but it was never to be. I never got to hang out with the Big Boss Man. No big skin off my ass, though, because he was never my favorite. But not a bad gimmick. He was brutal. Big fucking kind of fat guy. Big fat cop. He kind of walked back and forth between the good guy and the bad guy, the heel and the face or whatever, and he did it well enough. So, not Apex. I'm not even going to put that in badass. I am going to put that in W, though. It worked for him. Very well done. Next up, Skinner. You guys remember Skinner, right? Before Steve Irwin, there was Skinner. And his whole gimmick was just hunting crocodiles and skinning them, I guess. He was a trapper. I think he was supposed to be from the South. He wasn't Australian or nothing like that. He was some dude from the South living in the bayou, skinning snakes, skinning fucking alligators or something. I don't know. He never did much. That character didn't last too long. Kind of underwhelming. I mean, I guess the dude, honestly, for me, he looked kind of cool, I guess, because that's kind of how I dress. Well, I don't wear that fucking crocodile hunter hat, but the beard, the flannel shirt, he looks like shit. That's kind of me. That's kind of what I look like. I don't have a skullet. I tend to shave because I know my hair sucks and I'm balding, I just shave my fucking head. And, he was probably 260 pounds. I weigh about $160, so I don't look quite as cool and intimidating as he does. I smoke cigarettes. He chewed fucking tobacco, whatever. Nah. Not bad, but nah. Junkyard Dog. Huh. He had a chain around his neck. Honestly, man, he was kind of the early 80s. I didn't really start getting into this shit to the mid-late 80s. I remember playing with those action figures. I remember the big rubber guys that you could fucking beat your dog with and knock it out because they were so big and heavy. But I don't remember a lot about the Junkyard Dog, if I'm being honest. I know, looking at it through the modern lens, you know, right? This was an era rife with superstars there were very few African American superstars back then. And the one that was the most memorable walked around with a fucking chain on his neck and acted like a dog. So if I'm looking at it through a modern lens, I'm like, that's, seems a little degrading. Maybe a little bit racist. I hate to go there, because I'm not that guy. But the fucking gimmick worked for him, I guess. And I guess he's pretty cool. The name has a nice ring to it. I'm a Junkyard Dog. I don't know. I'm reaching here. Nah. Repo Man. Barry Darsow. Barry Darsow is a man of many gimmicks. For those of you who may not be aware, he was Smash from Demolition. Crusher Khrushchev, Smash of Demolition. The Repo Man. Hole-in-One Barry Darsow. Obviously, the worst of his fucking gimmicks. Repo Man's not quite like Barry Darsow. Hole-in-One Barry Darsow's ass blast. 100%. But we're not talking about Hole-in-One Barry Darsow. We're talking about the Repo Man. And again, like with the Big Boss Man, this was this guy's former profession. It was his idea to adopt that character. Unfortunately for him. And I'm a big fan of Barry Darsow. I like him. Every interview I've ever seen with him, I always appreciated his work with Demolition. I like Barry Darsow. I like Smash. I like the Repo Man. Unfortunately for him, you know, that gimmick was kind of short-lived. He's a mid-carder at best. And his whole angle was he wanted to eventually turn face, right? He didn't want to remain a heel. He never got to see that character through, though. Unfortunately for him. Fucking that broad that just filed a lawsuit wasn't the only person to get their head shit on by Vince McMahon, I guess, because McMahon put the kibosh on that too. I like the theme song. I like the way he handled that character. Is it a great gimmick for a wrestler? Nah, not really, but he cut some really good promos with it. Again, the theme song was good. I like Barry. I can't put it in the nah. But I also can't put it in badass. I can't put it in Apex. I gotta give it it's a solid W. Okay? I'm giving Repo Man the W. Next up, Headbangers. Mosh and Thrash. Now, there's not a whole lot that I consider myself a professional on, other than, you know, my current line of work, whatever. Even that, it's questionable. One thing that I have more experience with than anything else in life is fucking heavy metal. And I'm a guitar player. I played guitar since I was 12 years old. It's always been about Metallica and Slayer and Napalm Death and Deicide and fucking on and on and on. I know a thing or two about the world of metal. I've been in a variety of metal bands. Okay? I know a thing or two. These guys were not fucking real headbangers. I'd never been to a concert and saw guys wearing kilts. Unless maybe it was an Amon Amarth show or something like that, right? And they didn't look like these guys. They got it all mixed up. No fucking Marilyn Manson, kilts, fucking, you know, weird ass fucking football war paint. Like, nah, they never sold it to me. I didn't buy it. I knew real headbangers in my life. And these guys maybe they were. Maybe they were big fucking Slayer fans. I don't know. I never bought it. Right? And when I think of headbang, I'm sorry. They usually had a fucking Manson shirt on. Now, I'm not trying to I don't give a fuck about Marilyn Manson. He was never my cup of tea. I don't care about the dude's a piece of shit in real life anyway. I do appreciate Portrait of American Family. I thought it was a good album. Antichrist Superstar has its place in popular culture. That's all well and good. No disrespect to that music. But it's not what I think of when I think of headbanger. When I think of headbanger, at the very least, in that time, you fucking come out to Pantera or something. Okay? Korn existed at the time. Now, granted, they hadn't come out with Follow the Leader. They weren't as big a deal back then. But fucking, I don't know, man. Those guys kind of sucked. They were goofballs. I never cared for them. Al Goldust. Now, this is a pretty iconic character. Well, you know, it took a lot of, for Dustin Rhodes, that took a lot of fucking balls. Took a lot of balls to come out back then and play a gay character. And let's not fuck around. You know, let's not pretend. That was his whole thing. He was gay and he would make other people uncomfortable. One thing I always go back to is his little short rivalry with the Ultimate Warrior. Now, the Ultimate Warrior at the time, you're talking about, this was supposed to be his comeback in the mid-90s or whatever. It didn't last. You know, the late 80s, early 90s is where the Warrior peaked, and he was kind of on his way out. And then here comes the new blood, you know, the Hunter Hearst Helmsleys before he was Triple H, the Goldust, these sorts of characters. And Goldust and Warrior had a brief feud. And I remember, you know, like him kind of trying to flirt with the Ultimate Warrior. And the Ultimate Warrior is the ultimate caveman fucking, you know, and it was never going to fly. I gave him a lot of credit even though I didn't like the character. I thought, wow, you know, I was a kid, man, and I'm just like, oh, this guy's fucking, that wig looks goofy. You know, when you're a kid, you know, you're a teenager, whatever. To me, I looked at guys like the Warrior and Lex Luger and that, and it's like, yeah, dude, the wrestlers should be fucking jacked, and you should want to just do nothing but slam people. And so you had this, like, really kind of enigmatic, ambiguous fucking character, Goldust, and he did a lot with that character over the years. It wasn't just like he was some fruity guy with a feathery robe and a blonde wig for all that time. He did a lot with that character. I'd say honestly, if I'm being honest and talking personally, like Dustin Rhodes, Mark Calloway, right? Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, was the only guy I would rank above Dustin Rhodes as far as taking one character and evolving it just over the course of such a fucking career, right? So while on his face back when he debuted as Goldust, I gotta give a lot of credit to Dustin Rhodes for just being a fucking genius in the way he took that character. Because, I mean, think about where he comes from. He's the son of Dusty Rhodes, right? When he first debuted in the WWF, he was just a big Texan dude, right? Like, he wasn't like anything. There was no real gimmick. And he went from kind of being bland and whatever to this fucking iconic character. Hall of Fame all fucking day. I gotta be honest, man. And I'm sorry, I can't. Goldust goes into the apex. That's a fucking top-notch character. Top fucking notch. Next up, Rick Martel, the model. Arrogance. He had the fucking spray that he'd blast in your face, you know, to cheat or whatever. I don't know. Rick Martel's a phenomenal worker. No disrespect to the human being. That character was dog shit. Fucking absolute dog shit. Now, does the model, Rick Martel, does the model belong on the same tier as Max Moon and Sparky Plug? No, he doesn't. But he does. He gets the L. I don't know. I just, you know, I guess he was a decent heel. Rick Martel was good at pulling it off, but the character itself, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, though, for the time, I don't know. I gotta be fair. Rick Martel's too good to do that to him. I'm gonna put him in nah. All right. So next up, my man, Razor Ramon. Let's just not fuck around here. Scott Hall is my favorite wrestler of all time. The dude had the ability to cut a promo. He looked like a stud. I mean, no pun intended. He was a diamond stud at one point. Dude had the look. Dude had the promo ability. He had the in-ring work. And Razor Ramon, yes, again, just like Sting, he was a knockoff of a movie character. And again, like I said, Scott Hall's the guy who came up with the Crow gimmick. Yeah, he was 6'6" Scarface. If Scarface were muscle bound with flashy colors, you know, and like a foot taller, That's fucking Razor Ramon. I fucking loved Razor. I don't know. I'm biased because I know I said it's going to be about the character, not the individual. But Scott Hall, he's right up there with Kurt Hennig to me. He's in my top 2, 3. And he did a fucking wonderful job with Razor. Razor's going into Apex. I'm sorry. I was tempted to put him in Badass. But no, he's got to go to Apex. The Bushwhackers. Butch and Luke. 2 crazy New Zealanders with camo pants that licked each other's heads and were just completely insane. Never did a whole lot. They may have held the tag titles for a short time. I don't really recall. But they were unique. Who the fuck was ever like the Bushwhackers? I don't know who came up with that gimmick. The 2 lame brains from New Zealand that just, army pants and all that. But it endured their entire WWF career. They never had to switch face, heel, or change their gimmick or any of that. Bushwhackers are, they're not the most iconic. But they work. I'm going to put the Bushwhackers in W. And up next, here we go. Stone Cold Steve Austin. What can I say about Stone Cold Steve Austin? Now, when he first came into the WWF, he was the ringmaster. And he was kind of brought in to be that kind of, he was a heel, right? This is coming from his stunning Steve Austin days back in WCW, made his way over to ECW, made his way over to WWF. He was the ringmaster, whatever. I don't remember a whole lot about that gimmick, if I'm being honest, but eventually he just started talking shit, I guess, and it worked out for him. He didn't give a shit if you were a face or a heel, a bad guy or a good guy. He didn't give a shit if you were the ring announcer or somebody backstage doing interviews. He wanted to kick the shit out of everybody just the same. There were no allegiances. He wasn't a heel. He wasn't a face. He wasn't anything but for himself. And fuck, dude, that changed the whole landscape, didn't it? You think about icons in the pro wrestling world. From my day onward, right? I wasn't around for Bruno Sammartino. I wasn't around back in the day, of those real old schoolers, right? But I was around in the 80s when Hulk Hogan just changed the entire world, right? And really, I feel like, just like with video games, and I talk about video games in the past, not in a tier list, which one of these days I'll do. I always say, though, like, video games existed before, Super Mario Brothers. Before the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, video games did exist. There was Galaga, Asteroids, Pong, Pac-Man, Frogger, the Atari. There was all kinds of shit happening long before Nintendo was ever even conceived. However, what the Nintendo Entertainment System did for the industry is undeniable and unparalleled. It changed it from some novelty thing to a worldwide sensation. That's what Hulk Hogan did for pro wrestling back in the 80s. If I'm being real, hate to say it, given the controversy and all the shit talk about the guy, he's a fucking monster who shits on people's heads. Vince McMahon, that's not a surprise to me. The guy's always been a piece of shit, but you know what, man? You don't get to that position in life, be that successful, that rich, that driven, and also not have some skeletons in your closet. Well, the skeletons are out. Anyway, I don't want to get fucking sidetracked here. Hulk Hogan changed the fucking industry. Stone Cold was the guy who got the torch, in my opinion. Stone Cold Steve Austin is the guy who picked up where, the Hogan era ended, right? We can talk about the NWO. We can talk about all the things that changed, how that landscape shifted. But Stone Cold Steve Austin was highly responsible for that. You had the NWO and Stone Cold taking off at the same time, which is why that's my favorite era of wrestling. Because back, in the 80s, again, we talk about Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Junkyard Dog, Ultimate Warrior, all these guys. WWF had a stranglehold on the entire fucking industry, right? Sting was great. Ric Flair was great. Okay. But Ted Turner didn't have shit on Vince McMahon until the Monday Night War era. It was all about which promotion could captivate that audience that they had since the Hogan era, since the Golden Era, and keep them interested. And I really feel like WCW struck first blood. I'd have to go back and really look at the timeline, but I feel like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash may have been, they made their, they stormed the gates of WCW a little before Stone Cold took off. I could be wrong about that. If I am, correct me in the comments. But it didn't take Vince McMahon long to adapt. It didn't take long for a character like Stone Cold to take the reins and just transform everything. And ever since that dude came into the fucking limelight, the whole game was it was different after that. The Attitude Era begun. And it began with Stone Cold Steve Austin, the beer-drinking, ass-kicking Texan dude with the shaved head. Nothing fancy. It's not like the Ultimate Warrior with neon colors and the fucking tassels and shit. The 80s are long gone by this point. The Texas Rattlesnake. Come on, man. Apex tier. And now that I'm looking at it, I shit. As much as I love Scott, as much as I love Razor, this is about gimmicks. So I'm going to let him stay in Apex. But as far as icons go, even Mr. Perfect, as much as I love him, I mean, Stone Cold, you're not getting any higher than that. But the next guy on the list might have something to say about it, and it's The Rock. Stone Cold's rival back in the early days of the Attitude Era. I mean, the fucking Rock was right there with him. And as time has proven, I mean, Dwayne Johnson, for fucking whatever you can say about him, and I could say a lot, the dude made all the right moves. I already went on about Stone Cold, the bad, the rattlesnake, the badass with the fucking foul mouth, beer drinking, bird flipping, fucking all this, plain black leather vest. And then there's The Rock, dynamic, great on the mic, in a very, very, very different way from Steve Austin. It was like Elvis meets this big Samoan bodybuilder, football player type. He made it his own thing. We talk about gimmicks, and I mean, you can talk about guys like Adam Bomb and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, a barber, a police officer, a repo man. What is The Rock's gimmick? It's the fucking Rock. He invented his own fucking thing. The Rock is The Rock. And there's something to be said for that, right? There's nobody else like him. He invented his own character, and he took it as high as anyone can possibly take it. He's in fucking Hollywood now, man. He's an A-list celebrity. And I'll be honest, I don't like him. I think he's a phony. Dwayne Johnson, I think, is a corny and phony human being. But I gotta respect his fucking work ethic and his genius. I hate to do it, but I gotta be honest. The fucking Rock is in Apex, man. He has to be. I'd be an asshole if I didn't put him there. Okay, anyway, next up. 1, 2, 3 Kid. Not X-Pac. Not Six. Sean Altman, as he existed immediately after, pardon me, I'm a piece of shit. I gotta light this cigarette. Hang on. Again, this isn't the most professional thing in the world if you haven't figured it out by now. It was originally the Lightning Kid, and he was a fucking jobber, right? He was presented to the audience as a jobber, just another guy to get his head fucking smashed in by fucking Razor Ramon on a Saturday morning. Or in this case, I believe it was Monday Night Raw, back in the early days of Raw, before Raw was Raw. Okay? Or actually, it was Raw, because I think back in those days, it was actually live, and it was in a smaller theater. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to get sidetracked here. Lightning Kid, complete upset, pins Razor Ramon, becomes the 1-2-3 Kid. This skinny guy with a mullet. Looked like a fucking jobber. Looked every bit of a fucking jobber. And in fact, I mean, what year was this? Like 1993 or something? I remember looking at him thinking, shit, as a 13-year-old young adolescent, I felt like I had a better physique than this guy. I'm like, how underwhelming can you be? And he beat Razor Ramon. And he was a decent worker. Sean Altman, he's kind of a piece of shit human being, I think. You know, most of those people in the clique were, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I want to like Kevin Nash. I want to like Triple H. I do like Scott Hall. But all those dudes that were part of that crew, Shawn Michaels, Sean Altman, they're all fucking assholes. But that's beside the point. I can't hold that, just like I didn't hold it against The Rock. I'm not going to hold it against these guys. 1-2-3 Kid. Although, I will say that, I mean, how long did that gimmick last before he became Six, before he became X-Pac? So it was neat. It was cute. It was novel at first, but... Oh, fuck, I moved Rick Martel. L. 1-2-3 Kid. That's a fucking L gimmick. You beat somebody and you're excited about it. That's not a fucking great... You know, that's not something to put on your resume. I beat a guy once. And now I'm the 1-2-3 Kid. Well, everybody who's ever fucking pinned anybody's got the 1-2-3. You beat a guy that you weren't supposed to beat one time, and then they... You know, so whatever. Good on you for switching gimmicks, because that was a fucking L. Next up, Kane, the Big Red Machine. Now, this one's difficult because, you know, again, we talked about Fake Diesel. We talked about Isaac Yankem. And I'm not talking about Glenn Jacobs as Isaac Yankem or fucking Diesel. I'm talking about Kane. And even within that character, there has been a few iterations. There was the original. He's always been the Undertaker's brother. When he first emerged, that's gotta be Kane! That's gotta be Kane! Right, and ripped the fucking door off the cell and came in there and tombstoned the Undertaker and was just like, fuck you, I'm bigger, I'm more muscle bound, and I'm scarier than you. That made a fucking statement. And he's got that mask. It's like this like real life Jason Voorhees with like fucking death metal hair and shit. And he was fucking huge, man. Like Glenn Jacobs was fucking jacked back in those early days. I mean, look at the fucking guy's arms. That's a scary motherfucker. And then I remember when they removed the mask. And the first time he took it off, I mean, that's a pretty iconic moment in WWE history. And he had like the fucking skullet thing going or whatever, the black mascara under his eyes. That looked stupid that first time. But after that, when he was, then the character was Unmasked Kane, the psychopath. And he came out to the ring in shackles with a towel on his head and shit. Fucking Glenn Jacobs was a scary looking dude without the mask. And man, again, I talked about it with Goldust. I alluded to it with The Undertaker, but Glenn Jacobs, Kane, another one that was able to take that one character and do just so much with it. Just so fucking much with it. I fucking hell, man. I keep moving. You know what? I blame the touchscreen. By the way, I do all this from a cell phone, okay? I'm not doing this from a laptop. I don't have fucking money or time or whatever for that. So in this particular app that I use isn't the most touch sensitive. So sometimes it's hard for me to move shit around. So I apologize. But anyway, whatever. You don't need to hear about that. Kane, no doubt, dude. He's got to go to Apex. How can you not put Kane in Apex territory? Anyway, next up, LOD, the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal. They're a tag team. You don't get one without the other, okay? After, Hawk sadly passed away and it was the new LOD with Droz and all that, whatever. Or I think that was even before Hawk passed away. But it doesn't matter. It's Hawk and it's fucking Animal. It's those two guys. You go back to the WCW days when they were called the Road Warriors, and then when they made their WWF debut, it was the Legion of Doom. But it's the same team, though. Same two guys, same gimmick. Freaking huge, intimidating dudes with crazy haircuts, crazy war paint, fucking massive physiques, dude. These guys were the fucking scariest looking tag team ever. right? I'm not saying that these two guys, because of their size and their presence and all that, would beat up because if I were to bet money, I'd say the Steiners would probably beat them in a fight. But, man, I don't know. I think it might be even close, man. Hawk and Animal were two scary-looking motherfuckers. Those fucking football pads with the spikes coming out of it, the whole thing. A+ stellar fucking performance, right? And Demolition, the Blade Runners, the Powers of Pain, all these other teams, all these other gimmicks, they all owed it to the Road Warriors. And again, the world of pro wrestling, yes, they like to borrow from movies. The Road Warrior with Mel Gibson, of course, this is where they got the idea. But I don't remember Mel Gibson wearing those fucking crazy-ass spiky shoulder pads and being 290 pounds of solid steroid fucking muscle with a crazy mohawk and shit. So they unlike Sting, not trying to talk shit, they didn't make themselves look just like the movie. They did their own thing with it. All right, man. Apex is fucking stacking up because that's where they have to go there. And I got a spoiler alert. The next guy's going to go there too. Because how could he fucking not? The Undertaker. Mark Calloway, The Undertaker. Made his debut in Survivor Series of, was it 90 or 91? I don't remember the exact year, but it was either 90 or 91. And I remember watching that as a kid and being freaked out. Like, who the fuck is this guy? He was bigger than everybody else in the ring. He had that just blank stare, the hat, the outfit, the long coat. Brother Love was his manager at the time, which was a stark contrast, which I felt like actually worked. Yeah, Paul Bearer was definitely better, more fitting. But it worked even with Brother Love. I mean, you have this guy, you can't hurt him. He's no-selling moves. He looks intimidating as hell. What an athlete. What a character. Can't say enough about The Undertaker. And I've rambled on and on about so many of his characters, so I feel bad not taking the time to talk about this guy's entire career. But I mean, you're talking about, again, I mentioned it with Goldust and Kane and that, but even Dustin Rhodes, even Glenn Jacobs, they're nowhere near, no one is near Mark Calloway and what he was able to do with this one character. Nobody even fucking close. So I almost feel like I need to create another tier beyond Apex for The Undertaker to fit into. Because the Dead Man, the American Badass, the Satanic fucking Priest, the fucking Phantom of the Opera, all these different gimmicks that this dude has had with one character. It was all The Undertaker. Nobody better. And then if you combine that with his in-ring work, nobody touches The Undertaker. I'm sorry, nobody. Not fucking Stone Cold, not Hulk Hogan. Nobody's had the longevity of Mark Calloway with this character. Because even Hulk Hogan, he was iconic as he was, kind of lit the match that started the whole fire. How many years did that character last before it kind of fell from popularity, right? Because by the mid-90s, it wasn't Hulk Hogan anymore. That wasn't cool anymore. It was Hollywood Hogan. He had to change. Yeah, and I mean, I guess you could make the argument that it's still the same character. It's just a heel version. No different. Undertaker he's transitioned from heel to face. So I guess I can understand it. Yeah. Now that I'm saying all this out loud, I'm kind of having this inner debate with myself, right? But whatever. I mean, you're talking about Hulk Hogan. You're talking about The Undertaker. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, these are two of the top of the heap. Whatever. I'm not going to waste 10 hours talking about it. Undertaker is an apex in front of everybody else. Holy shit, we still got a few to get through, guys. Next up, the Berserker. The Viking, John Nord, whatever. The Viking, the Berserker, same character, John Nord. Your last name's fucking Nord. How can you not play a Viking? Big motherfucker. Goofy, right? He had the horned helmet and a shield and a sword. I remember speaking to The Undertaker, those two having a rivalry, because at the time, nobody could hurt The Undertaker. And here comes this fucking half brain dead monster with a Viking helmet, thought he's living in like the 16th century or something, repeats one word over and over, and it's not even a word, it's just huss, huss, huss. The whole fucking match, this guy, huss. That's fucking insane. It was bizarre. But it was actually scary, because he was able to topple The Undertaker a couple times. He even tried to stab him in the middle of the ring. Fortunately for The Undertaker, he did the famous sit-up move before the sword could get plunged in, and then you look at this image of the sword sticking through the wrestling mat, and it's like, holy shit, this guy's insane. Big, strong, fucking crazy-looking dude. Definitely nowhere near the icon that the guys in Apex are, right? And I don't want to put him in the same ranks of Sting either. Although, poor Sting, he's getting lonely up there at Badass. He's the only one. For its time and the way that character was executed by John Nord, I gotta give him a W. It's a win. It's a fucking win. It was short-lived, but it was a win. Next up, Earthquake. John Tenta. Phenomenal at fucking 400 and some odd pounds. Former sumo champion. Legit, right? Canadian Earthquake. As far as I know, one of the nicest guys ever to fucking grace the business, personally. John Tenta. Hated being a heel. Love Kid. I mean, I don't know, this is all about the gimmick and not the person, right? But I gotta say these things. Because Golga, which was his last gimmick before his untimely passing, it just didn't hold a candle to Earthquake. Earthquake was iconic. The rivalries with Hulk Hogan, the rivalries with the Ultimate Warrior. And here's this giant dude who's, trying to squash these guys. And it just worked. And I remember there was those moments when Yokozuna, because Yokozuna had come into the fore a few years after the Earthquake made his debut, and now there's this even bigger, fatter guy, right, who's supposedly this sumo champion, and those rivalries. And I'll say, I got to throw this other thing. I mentioned Yokozuna, I got to mention Andre the Giant, okay? Just as a little aside, personal anecdote. I remember my uncle back in 1992, maybe? 91 or 92. Undertaker and the Ultimate Warrior were having a rivalry. My uncle took me and my cousins to a house show. And it was Undertaker versus Ultimate Warrior in a body bag match. Mr. Perfect versus Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, in an Intercontinental title match. And there was a 20-man battle royal prior to all that. And I watched Andre and Earthquake eliminate each other from the battle royal. And then I watched them kind of size each other up outside the ring, and kind of they shoved each other through the fucking entrance ramp and into the fucking behind the curtain. I thought that was the coolest fucking thing, Earthquake and Andre. And I'll say I was blessed to have the opportunity to see Andre the Giant live in action kind of before, that was it. Shortly thereafter, he retired from the sport, and of course, he passed away not long after that. But really cool moment. Whatever, just felt like talking about that. But anyway, the gimmick of Earthquake fit the guy perfectly. He pulled it off well. The Natural Disasters, very formidable tag team once he teamed up with the fucking Shockmaster Typhoon. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead. Sting's getting lonely up there, John. Badass. Not Apex, but fucking badass. Ultimate Warrior. All right. Now, there's a lot we could talk about here with the Ultimate Warrior. What you got to keep in mind is he's a product of his environment, okay? John Helwig. Say what you want about the individual. Say what you want about the man. Say what you want about the Ultimate Warrior when they tried to bring him back into the Monday Night Wars era during the NWO run and all that. It just fucking tanked. It didn't work. Early 90s was over, man. There was just a very, very short window of opportunity for the Ultimate Warrior character to work. But when it worked, it fucking worked. The dude, look at this motherfucker. Look at this guy's physique. This is back in the day when like Arnold Schwarzenegger was on top of the world with, Terminator, Predator, all this. I mean, fucking there was like this kind of bodybuilding craze going on or whatever. And here's this guy that's just as physically imposing as any of those motherfuckers. He's screaming, doing these bizarre promos with the crazy iconic paint, the tassels, which are making the veins pop out of his arms even more than they already normally would. The music, the entrance, his in-ring ability sucked. I'm not going to fucking lie. This isn't about the best workers, though. We're not talking about Bret Hart. We're not talking about Shawn Michaels in terms of, in-ring ability. We're talking about the gimmick, the character. And I got to say, man, for his time, there was nobody better. There was no cooler gimmick than the Ultimate Warrior. And granted, I went on and on and on about Calloway and Hogan and Dustin Rhodes about being able to take that one character and make it work throughout fucking decades, right? And that is the only reason that the Ultimate Warrior is not going into Apex. He can't. Because that character just couldn't evolve. It couldn't adapt. It didn't last. As awesome as it was, best I can do, badass. Ultimate Warrior was badass. It just didn't last. Okay, I feel like I already talked about this next one. Hulk Hogan. And I did already talk about it. So I'm not going to waste a whole lot more time. What can you fucking say that I haven't already said? Hulk Hogan, icon of icons. Gotta go to Apex. Next up, Honky Tonk Man. You're a bigger, fatter Elvis. And you give funny shoot interviews on Hannibal TV. You were an Intercontinental Champion before the Warrior fucking came in and beat your ass, and you seem salty about it. Oh, I was a better worker than the Warrior. He come in, this guy didn't know shit, didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. It's all right, fine. You look like a doughy piece of shit Elvis impersonator. He was jacked and had a fucking way better gimmick and had way better theme music, and it fucking worked. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you didn't like the Jim Hellwig, the person. I'm sorry you didn't like his ability to work. He did enough with what he fucking had. Honky Tonk Man, though, I don't want to be too hard on the guy. Nah, he's not ass blast. And I don't even want to say it's an L. Because he did make for some funny moments. Nah. Whatever. Honky Tonk Man, nah. $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Great theme song. Great laugh. Great career for the most part. He was the one who debuted The Undertaker. Right? The Undertaker was part of the $1 Million team back in the Survivor Series in those days. Was he... he was a good heel. He was a good heel. At that time, that fucking character really worked. Great voice. As someone who, I talk a lot of shit. I've been a singer in bands. I use my voice here. I've gone to school for voice. I know a thing or two about voice. And Ted DiBiase had a great voice. Not the best physique you ever saw. Never really a title contender outside of the $1 Million belt. Who did I just moved somebody again, damn it. Anyway, whatever. $1 Million Man. It's a win. I gotta give it the W. It wasn't a bad character. All right, Gangrel. He's a fat vampire. Cool theme song. I can't tell you a whole lot about his in-ring. I'd have to go back and watch his matches to tell you what kind of worker this guy was. I think he's got a fucking... he owns a head shop now, or is that Val Venus? I don't remember. Whatever. He's a fat vampire, and he did have a cool entrance. He had that whole, Brood thing going with, Edge and Christian, all these weird blonde goths. Hey, man, you pulled off the blonde goth thing, which prior to that was something I'd never seen before, and he's spitting blood in that, and he looked cool. But that was it, though. Your entrance was cool. You look cool and once you were in the ring, you looked like a fucking weirdo with a fucking, just was sloppy drinking fucking Kool-Aid or something. I don't know. and vampires, I don't know. I feel bad digging on a guy because we're talking about the Undertaker and all that and putting him in the apex and that. But you know what? Nah. I don't want to put you in L. Theme song was too cool for that. Your entrance was too cool for that. But you're going to L. Scott Steiner, as in Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. This one's an interesting one for me because Scott Steiner is one of my favorites. I, in fact, don't think overall there's a better in-ring fucking worker than Scott Steiner. If you're considering Scott Steiner's entire career, right? Like, when you go back to the heyday of the Steiner brothers, you look at the Frankensteiner, the Steiner, well, not the Steiner recliner, but the guy had a plethora of fucking original moves that he could do. He was a powerful guy. Motherfucker was like 275, 280 pounds. Or well, maybe 265, 270 back in his younger days. Still a big motherfucker to be pulling off all these high-level, acrobatic, athletic moves. Moved like a fucking cat. Unbelievably athletic. You know, both the Steiners were fucking amazing athletes, but Scott in particular was just on another level. Okay? Then when he transitioned to Big Papa Pump, all that stuff, a lot of that the Frankenstein and all that stuff went by the wayside, and everything was more focused. It wasn't the Frankenstein, it was a Steiner recliner. It was like these power moves. Not as athletically impressive, but the dude talked a lot more shit. Much more iconic look. Taking a page out of the superstar Billy Graham playbook, no doubt. But was there ever a more jacked fucking pro wrestler ever than Scott Steiner? That motherfucker, dude. You know, I'm not a bodybuilding judge or anything by any means, and I'm sure if it came down to it, you know, like Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, these guys probably were more proportioned and all that. But just as far as insane physiques, this fucking jacked biceps and all that, I mean, that dude was he was like 10 steps ahead of every other pro wrestler in terms of his physique. And even back in the Scotty days, even back in the Steiner Brothers days, people would always say, oh, and he packed on all this muscle. To me, yeah, he packed on a little bit extra muscle. He was always fucking jacked. It's just that he managed to do whatever drugs he needed to do to trim all that extra baby fat off of his frame and then just replace it with just that little bit more muscle, which made everything pop more. He definitely looked more like a bodybuilder. But make no mistake, that motherfucker was always jacked. Scott Steiner was a jacked motherfucker throughout his entire career, pretty much. But Big Papa Pump, dude, the guy cut some of the best promo. People make fun of the promos. The whole Steiner math thing, the 2+2 chance, whatever the fuck. I'm not even going to try to do that dude's voice. I don't know how much of it was intentionally funny versus unintentionally funny, but it fucking worked into all the shit talk against Ric Flair. Man, he had some great promos. Just his voice was something else, too. Nobody sounded like Scott Steiner. I can't put him with the Mr. Perfects, the Undertakers, the Hulk Hogans. I can't put him in the apex. But he easily ranks up there with the badasses. With Sting, with Earthquake, with Ultimate Warrior. Scott Steiner's right there with them. Goldberg, next up on the list. I fucking loved Goldberg when I was like 17 years old. Right? He sold that gimmick very well. It's like Stone Cold was the big dude with the shaved head and the black trunks. Obviously had a lot more to say than Goldberg did. The reason being, he was actually a lot better than Goldberg in terms of like his promo skills. But Goldberg had no promo, still has no promo skills. The guy should have never said a fucking word. Should have kept his mouth shut. Guys like him and Brock's probably better than Goldberg now these days. I don't really watch it anymore. But you're better off just shutting your mouth and letting your fucking body do the talking. Let your actions do the talking. Because it just worked better that way. You know, you come in for these 20-second squash matches. He looked as intimidating as one could with those giant traps, the shaved head. I mean, nobody more intimidating looking than a 32-year-old Bill Goldberg. In-ring ability, that's up for debate. And that's a debate maybe I'll have in another video. Because I think it takes a while. Obviously, guys like Bret Hart fucking rue the day that Goldberg ever fucking signed a contract. worst performer ever, unsafe, hurt people, ended my career, kicked me in the head, whatever. I would push back on some of that. I think if you look at like his body of work in the ring versus, say, the Ultimate Warrior, who's another guy that was criticized for being stiff or not having a lot of in-ring ability, I think Goldberg sells everything a lot better than Hellwig or the Warrior ever did. But again, I don't want to get sidetracked into that conversation. We can talk about that another time. And then there's a personality issue. Goldberg's kind of a dickhead. I cannot put that gimmick. It was very one-dimensional, okay? I will say that. He made it work, I guess, though. 20 years ago or so, I'd have put him in the Apex or Badass. I'm just going to put him in the win. It's a win. He's not a fucking loser. It's not a nah. Goldberg was the shit for a little while. That shit got old fairly quickly, though. And that's it. That was, the couple times I fumbled around with the list here. Where did I have 1, 2, 3 Kid? Did I have him in L? And I probably had Honky Tonk in L or not or whatever. I'm putting him back there now, whatever, because we're going over an hour here, longer than I intended to take. So just to recap: Apex, Mr. Perfect, Goldust, Razor Ramon, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Kane, the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, Badass, Sting, Earthquake, Ultimate Warrior, Scott Steiner. W, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Big Boss Man, Repo Man, The Bushwhackers, The Berserker, $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, and Goldberg. Nah, Skinner, Junkyard Dog, Model, Gangrel. L, Atom Bomb, Headbangers, 1, 2, 3 Kid, and Honky Tonk Man. Ass Blast. It's an empty category by comparison. Sparky Plug and Max Moon. And I think that's all fucking fair. Again, guys, I'll be back with it. We're not halfway done. I fully intend to do at least 1 or 2 more of these with the WWF guys from back in the day. If you have any other thoughts or ideas, leave them in the comments below. Much appreciate that. Much appreciate you sticking with me to the end of this thing. Until I get to the next one, you have a great time.